In this module, we would like to start to add routing to our application, and we're going to have to go outside of React to do this. We're going to have to go and use the React router, which is a package that we can install. Documentation on the site is really great. You can look at the setup here, whether you're using Vite to set up your project, you install that, and then you use npm to install React Router DOM. That's the command we're going to use. So on the command line, we're going to run npm and we're going to install the React Router DOM. npm is going to go and grab all these packages and install them into Node modules. So now that this is installed, we need to take a look at the package.json. And you'll see here that it installed React Router DOM version 6. We have to be mindful of the different versions of React Router because how they do routes are a little bit different. So now that we installed this, we can kick off our application again. Remember our cores button, so we need to make sure our cores is toggled off so that we can make that network request. So now we have all of our data coming in. We just want to add some routing here. We want to have another page. We want to create a watch list. So what we're going to do is we need to create a navigation component. So we're going to create a new file. We're going to name it navigation.jsx. We're going to create a navigational functional component. And for now, it's just going to return a React fragment to start. Remember, we need to actually export this so that we can import it into our main file. So back in our app.js file here, we can pull in this navigation because this is where we are going to be adding our router across our application. So you can see here we have the nav bar on the top. Back in our navigation component, ideally we'll have an unordered list here. So we may have a div container. We're going to add a class name to this so that we can center this a little bit better. We'll probably add more styling later on to this, but for right now, we would like to have it centered at least. So back in our CSS, cryptocards.css, we're just going to add a class selector for navigation container. We already know that's wired up. We'll try to make it flexible via Flexbox. And we want to justify the content to be in the center. And obviously the hot reloader is running in the background. So we know the navigation bar component is being rendered. What we need to do is pull in some functionality from the React Router package. So they have a link component to work with. So we're pulling this in from React Router DOM using destructuring, importing in this component. And here to make this HTML a little bit more valid, we will use the navigation tab. And within the navigation tab, we'll create that unordered list with two list items. So these will be our pages that we would like. These will be our links that we would like to navigate to. So this will give us a little bit of a bullet list. Again, with CSS, we can remove the bullets later on and improve the appearance. But for right now, we have two items. So we want to add a second item for watch list. Of course, the first one is going to be our dashboard. We want to use this link component that the React Router gives us to create a hyperlink, but not just an ordinary hyperlink, a link that will help us navigate throughout our React application. We can set the content to dashboard. We need to set the attribute to. This is where our router is going to be listening to. So when we're clicking the link, this is part of the route it's going to pass through. Now we're getting a little bit of a runtime error here. It's gone away quickly. So we go back to our app.js. We need to configure the routes here. App.js, this is where we need to configure our routing table and our routes. So we can use the browser router and give it an alias of router from React Router DOM. But what we need to do with this is we need to wrap this router around our application. So we give our application, our components, a context, basically a router context. So when we're wrapping our applications, then it will understand that routing has taken place and we may need to change the render. So right now we have the navigation kind of wired up, but there's no routes defined. Now that we have the links, trying to link somewhere, we need a way to handle those requests for the routes. So we want to pull in the routes as well as the route from React Router DOM. This is where we're going to define our route table. So we have the tag routes, and within here is where we create the specific routes we're going to be matching against. So we use the routes, and then we have the route fragment that has a path attribute and has the element. And the element is the component that is going to be rendered when the route path is matched. So if you recall in the link crypto dashboard, we just had the /route, which is like the index route. So if we go here, that is the base route. It is actually loading up our component. You won't really notice until you can see it's loading actually, that's a good thing. And we have our dashboard here. So when we have two routes in place, you'll see that we can go back and forth. Next up, we're going to have to create a watch list component. This is going to be where we're going to store all of our favorites. For now, we don't have a backend mechanism to do this, but eventually when we have a backend, this is what we will be able to render here as our saved list. But for now, we're just going to create a component placeholder so that we can see our routing working. So we'll just give this a header tag of watch list. Very simple little component that's going to be a placeholder. And we got to make sure we're exporting it out so that we can load it in. So back in our app.js, we want to pull in this new watch list component. This is what we want to render when somebody clicks the watch list link. So you'll see this when we have two routes working. You'll actually see the router loading in and out the components. So you'll see we'll add another route. The path will be watch list. And the element that we would like to render is actually the watch list component. So you'll see here, we'll add this in, and we should have a little bit of a routing table here, and we should be able to navigate a little bit now between the two pages. Now remember, it's not a multi-page app. It's actually a single page application, but because of the router, it gives us the behavior as if we are changing and navigating around a multi-page website. So now if we expand it, we go to the watch list. You can see the route is watch list. It's loading up. We go back to dashboard. We load in, and it's doing a fetch right now for the real data, but we are actually on the dashboard. So that loaded in all the data. It took a little bit to load in because it's making a network request. We can also add a wildcard here. This could be an error page here that if somebody enters a bad route or for some reason then we navigate to a part of the site we don't want to, we can capture this. This will be the default route. So if nothing matches on the dashboard or the watch list, we can have a not found page. So we can see here, these are valid routes. But if somebody comes in and tries to change the URL, we can give a not found little message. Now we can improve the UI, but what's interesting here with the newest React router is we can directly put a little fragment directly in that element tag. Whereas previous React routers, React 4 and 5, you had to actually put the component only in there, but now we can put fragments directly in there. Back in our dev tools, we're looking at the network tab here, and we can see that our requests are being made. You can see the request from CoinMarketCap latest API endpoint is being called, and you can inspect the payload that is coming back. So that's part of our working with data, and that is loading in every time we're changing the route. We can add to this, by the way. Part of that network request is it was pulling all of the data. So that's a big payload. We want to speed this up so that we can limit it to 10 records. So if we go back, hopefully this will load a little bit quicker with a smaller payload. So now back in our crypto card component, we're going to start to add a favorite button. We would like eventually that when we click on this button, it's going to add a favorite cryptocurrency coin or symbol that we could use to send to the backend eventually. But for now, we're just going to set up our event handlers using the DOM on click event. So for now, we're creating just a function to handle a synthetic event. For now, we're creating a event handler, and we're going to just fire a window.alert here just so we know it's wired up. We're going to put an on click event on the button, and we're going to change the text to add watch list. We need to wrap the braces to wire up our function. So now we have handle add watch list. That should trigger the window alert. We have to make sure we spell the actual handler correctly though. So now if we go back to our application here, when we click this, it should throw the alert up. So it's wired up. However, we don't have any backend to work with yet, but that's okay. We're just putting the plumbing in because we're building this out. One thing we could add that's kind of neat is you could add Font Awesome to this if we needed to add some better, for instance, for the watch list, we could put a heart icon or some type of clock or something like that, just to make the button a little bit more attractive than just having add watch list. So we can go and install npm Font Awesome, go to npm registry, find Font Awesome if you would like to look at how it's installed. But for now, we'll do npm install Font Awesome directly from the npm repository. Again, always look at the npm registry and always try to find packages that have been downloaded quite frequently and are well established. So this is installed now. We have all of the little icons that are free that we can work with. Once we run our application, we can go to our CryptoCard component and import in Font Awesome, import in all the CSS that we need. So via the classes now, we can apply to our button a little icon. So if you go to Font Awesome website, you can see all of the free icons they have available here. And you can navigate around and add the free ones if you want. Maybe you want a star, heart, what have you. You can search and then you can grab the latest here. You could add a watch list. Maybe that might be all right. You can take a look at the size of the image, what it looks like, dark or light, and you can add this as a watch list item. We'll wrap this in a div tag. We will look at the HTML that they provide to us there. You can see it's an I tag with a class fa-solid fai. So they'll give you the markup that you can directly put in. Once you put that in, go back to our app, and you'll see there we have a little icon. Now that doesn't maybe look the greatest to me, but maybe like a heart icon. Perhaps a heart icon might be a little bit better, might be more legible, but I'll leave that to you to choose the icon you prefer. So maybe we'll search for heart. We'll search for heart. I kind of like that item there, so I'll grab the markup and I'll use that instead. When we apply those changes, we'll see the button now looks a little bit nicer, perhaps, in my opinion. So we have this wired up. We can add some styling here, perhaps maybe inline styling to maybe center it a little bit better or give it a little bit more padding so the button looks a little bit more. We can add a little bit of padding or margin, or we can give it a height and width to make a button a little bit bigger. Remember, you can do inline styling with React JSX. If it gets bigger than this, or you feel like you're going to be reusing styles, it's good to create a CSS class. But for inline CSS for this particular example, it's quick and it's very quick to do. And you can see we give it 40 by 40. And if we find we have more buttons, then that might be a opportunity to make a CSS class. So for now, we have the favorites all set up. We have some watch list route. So we're ready to build this out when we have a backend. So next up, we're probably going to address a couple bugs we have in the next module, but for now we have a good start.